Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. As the announcement noted, this is going to be a bit of an informal overview rundown, and so please jot down some questions. We're planning on waiting till the end to do the questions, but we want to share information. We want to answer questions the best we can. We know the open FOA, there's a lot of interest in what's going on, and so we want to just get the information out that's important to you, but there will be information beyond this presentation, so feel free to ask at the end beyond even what we're talking about here. So we'll give you an ARM overview first. The ARM Bankhead National Forest site will, Chongai will talk about the science motivation that brought us there. And then Mark will talk about the site location and the instrumentation that we have there. And then I'm going to give you a rundown of the ARM field campaign process. For those of you who are a little bit less familiar, we are the Department of Energy Atmospheric Radiation Measurement User Facility. We've been operating observatories since 1992. We have measurements of clouds, aerosol, precipitation, radiation, and surface properties, as well as the atmospheric state. Our work is delivering data and products and support for process studies, model, and satellite development. We have 3 fixed observatories and we have 3 mobile observatories. 2 of those move quite regularly on a 1 to 2 year cycle. The third one is in Alabama now at Bankhead National Forest, and it moves on a 5+ year timeline. We have piloted and uncrewed aerial measurement platforms. We have an extensive data management infrastructure. Our data are freely available to anyone who registers. We have a large eddy simulation, model simulations, and we have analysis tools. We have support for field campaigns that range from guest instruments to full facility deployments. Just a few things we want to note. We are preparing Bombardier Challenger 850. This is expected to be doing science flights in 2027, so you'll be hearing more about that in the coming years. We have a tethered balloon system. We have multiple actually, and we have been deployed to Alaska, the Southern Great Plains, Houston, and even the mountains in Colorado. So this has been a very up and coming effort. It's getting quite popular, and we have a annual FICUS call, and you can propose to ARM annually to use that. We have the Arctic Shark uncrewed aerial system that is flying now at SGP and Bankhead National Forest. On the left, we want to highlight a few of our things. We have resources for discovery, retrieval, and application of ARM data. On the left, you see our data discovery tool. Please note in this tool, it's very extensive, but there's a lot of little eyes and information. I've kind of circled some in green there. Look for those if you're lost or you're not sure how it works. There is a lot of assistance sitting right there on the page to help you understand what you're looking at or where to go find things. And one thing to note specifically when you're looking at the products, there is this little kind of hamburger-esque link here. This will bring up a lot of metadata information. So you can find information about the quality of the data. You can find information about who to contact if you have questions or concerns about that. So please feel free to open that up, and there's quite an extensive amount of information for you there. We have computing capabilities that I'm not going to elaborate too much on today, but you can ask questions if you need to. We support operational processing for ARM. We have our LASA modeling efforts, and then we have a data-intensive ARM user projects that you can propose through our high-performance computing request. We have options for getting answers to questions and to provide feedback for us. Please go to the ARM website for all things ARM and lots of information. Particularly today, we're going to be looking at the research tab at the top, and this is where our campaign information is. The footer on all ARM websites is the same. So the one thing I want to note up front, please do not assume anything. Use the Ask Us button, and we will route this to one of the 250 or so people that work in ARM, and we'll get you to the right person to answer your questions if you don't already know who they are. I will come back to that footer as we talk a little bit more, but I want Chongai to jump in now and focus us on Bankhead National Forest.
Can do. Is this showing up okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, everyone, welcome Welcome to this webinar. Really excited to kind of, set some background, set the table a little bit. Again, point you to the places to find the right resources if you have questions, but then also ask questions as you might have them here. So I'm going to get into a little bit about kind of our science-driven siting and motivators for this deployment. So Nikki already kind of went over the background on ARM, so I will skip these two slides and go directly into the relocation of this AMF3 to the Southeast United States. So in brief, there was a workshop in 2018 where ARM solicited input from the community about where to prioritize deployments of these ARM mobile facilities. So the Southeast US was identified as one of those priority regions because it's an area with abundant surface force shallow to deep convection, a large amount of vegetative-driven biogenic emissions, and then also an area where there's a strong local coupling of the land surface with atmospheric processes. We expect a 5-year deployment, and as mentioned earlier, the site is now operational. So our site science team and our site science project were jointly funded by ARM, the user facility, and Atmospheric Systems Research Science Program to find the location, to instrument it, and develop an initial science plan for the site. Right? And a lot of the logistics of configuration was done jointly with our site operation partners at Argonne National Laboratory. So a theme that kind of developed and emerged from our science plan, not going to do that right now. A theme that emerged from our siting and our discussions and our science plan was that we wanted to be in a region and a site where we could really look at from the canopy to the clouds types of science drivers and science questions. And then, but after doing some more thinking and discussions and engagement with the community, this also applies to from the canopy to the ground and also below ground at some point. So really getting a more comprehensive type of look and peek at these coupled processes within this particular domain. This is a deployment and in a region that is going to be looking at multi-scale types of phenomena and processes. So these 3 images that I'm kind of marching you through, we're really looking at kind of very local scale, like tree stand scale in the lower left. That is a LiDAR-derived map of canopy height from 2012, and then stepping through the larger domain for the deployment of this AMF3, and then even further out still at larger scales, looking at, again, the type of nice diversity of cloud and cloud types over the Southeast United States. Here are some of the science drivers and coupled science processes that we kind of really held in mind as we were trying to find the site and to configure this site. So, this site is situated in such a place and instrumented in such a way to really be able to tackle land atmosphere coupling, those impacts of surface interactions on aerosol properties and processes, and then both aerosol controls and land atmosphere controls on the deep convective cloud life cycle within this region. So with all these kind of science drivers developed and articulated not only in our science plan, but with engagement with the broader community, that kind of led us to a series of siting criteria as we kind of went about trying to establish the site. So just in brief, we wanted to prioritize interior regions of the Southeast United States. We wanted to be in low complexity terrain with quote unquote representative type of land surface types. Again, wanted to be in a region with representative air mass sampling. So seeing a range in biogenic and anthropogenic emissions. So definitely didn't want to be in a region that was too pristine, but didn't want to be in a region that was too urban either. And also in a region where there were frequent clouds, high amount of cloud diversity, shallow to deep convection, and severe weather. So I'm going to skip this slide and just go very quickly to, I think this might be my last slide, just to kind of, and then we'll probably talk more about some of these operational aspects, but again, giving you a sense of what the site layout looks like. On the right, with our supplemental sites and our supplemental radar sites relative to the main site in the orange square, and then on the left, kind of a zoomed in image of the character of the forest canopy at the main site. So showing where the instrument field is, the support facilities, and also where the measurement tower is. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Chungai. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Chungai. Okay, so now we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into sort of where we're at and the items that we have deployed and the capabilities that we'll have at each of these different sites. So I'm gonna try and share here. Give me 1 second while I figure that out. Share. I'm going to try and do this by window because I would like to take you. Oh, okay. Well, I have to quit and reopen Zoom, so bear with me. I will be right back while I do that.
Sorry about that, everyone.
So I'm also going to put a link into the chat to the ARM Field Campaign page for the AMF3 BNF.
Thanks, Chungai. I have added the BNF Science page and the BNF Observatory page, but I did not do the Hill Campaign link. Oh,
I'm back. I am sorry about that. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to try and do it by application because I want to take you on a little quick Google Earth tour, if that's all right. So let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so Chungai kind of went into where we were located relative to the US, and this is sort of an overview, bird's eye view of our whole site, right? So you'll see the different S numbers and items like that as we move through here, which are the supplemental sites. So we'll zoom in first on the main site, which is M1. That's our main facility. Our main office is up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse when I move it around, but our main office is there, and down towards the back is our main instrument field. And I'll get into what everything is in the main instrument field. And then you can see there's an area where our TBS operations will be conducted as well. And then just about over a kilometer to the west, you see our tower site, which is called S10. And S13 and S14 are supplemental tower sites. Those are 10-meter towers that are instrumented with some flux measurement instrumentation that I'll get into. And then if we zoom back out, we end up going to our supplemental profiling sites. And these are located in that triangular fashion that Chungai shared earlier. So our first is S20 up here near Cortland, Alabama. And each of these, I'll kind of go over what instrumentation is available at each of them, but I wanted to give you a really good bird's eye view of everything before we got started. S30 is near Falkville, Alabama. This is a sort of grazing and pasture land area. And then S40 is located in Double Springs, Alabama, to the southwest here of the main site. Each of these supplemental sites is between 45 and 50 kilometers from each other. They're between 35 and 20 and 35 kilometers from the main site, to give you some distance and perspective on that. And then beyond those three supplemental sites, we also have S3 and S4, which are our two radar observation sites, where we have at S4 the scanning arm cloud radar, and then at near Moulton, Alabama, and then at S3 we have the CSAPR 2, right? So that's located up near Trinity, Alabama. And these were placed in such a way to cooperate with existing radar observations in the area. So that's kind of the overall BNF tour. And now I'm going to jump into some PowerPoint here and share that with you. So let me switch my share here. Share. All right, now you can see my whole desktop, right? Very good. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the instrumentation that's available at each of these sites. So this is sort of the overall map that Chungai shared with you. If you scan either of these QR codes, the top right one that's labeled Inst Plan. That's the instrumentation plan for the site. The bottom right one that's labeled BNF Map is actually the locations page on the BNF website. And you can kind of follow along, and I'll have more QR codes at each step. But this is sort of the overview, the grand overview of our deployment here in Alabama. This is M1. This is the main instrument field behind the main office. And you see here on the right, sort of the layout of all of our instrumentation, and you will have a copy of this. So you should be able to reference this if you're particularly interested in one measurement or another. You can see where it's been laid out in our instrument field. This instrument field is 300 by 300 feet clearing, and we're sort of on the right side of that clearing, and that will make more sense once we can share some more overhead views of it after all construction is said and done. You see this table of instrumentation here. Those highlighted in blue are in the AOS container, which is up here on the northeast corner of the instrument field. Everything else is deployed as part of either the Met Tower or complementary to it on elevated platform here on the southwest side of the cluster of instrumentation in the field here. But I also wanted to highlight this very nice double wide trailer here, which is called our guest instrument facility. It is open and ready. It has power and internet and ready to host guest scientists. So we're very excited about that as a mobile facility, having our own guest instrument facility. The three instruments up here in this sort of yellow color are just up near the main office. So they're not actually in this graphic on the right. So I wanted to point that out. This is our S10 tower site, right? So this is 1.12 kilometers west of the main instrument field. As you can see, it's due to have quite a lot of instrumentation. Right now, construction is due to start November 4th on this tower. And it's been a hard battle, but we're excited to get some booms on this. You can see that it has, there's actually 4 different cantilevered platforms throughout the canopy and above the canopy, which enables us to get some really interesting measurements. You can see the schedule of instrumentation that's due to go on this. I invite you to again scan the instrument plan. And as you see, as we step through here on the top left, each of these will take you to the location information for each of these. So I know a lot of folks like to know, okay, where exactly is this to be deployed? So each of these QR codes in the top left are distinct to each of these locations. So if you see an instrument that you like and are interested in knowing more about, scan that and you'll know exactly where it's going to be. With the S10 site, we saw those S13 and S14. Those are, like I said, the 10-meter supplemental tower sites that will be about 30 to, let's see, so S13 is about 30 meters northwest of the tower. You can see there on the schematic, and S14 is about what did I say? 50 meters southwest of the main tower. I wanted to point out that we have 2 instrument shelters here. One of these will house the PGS ISO that will go on S10. Another one is empty and ready for folks to deploy instrumentation to or use as a workspace while they deploy maybe S13 or S14. So we do have power and fiber running to S13 and S14 as well as S10. And so it's a pretty exciting and very new deployment type for ARM. And so we'll be very, very happy once we get this thing up and running. So moving out away from the center of the Bankhead and sort of looking at the edges of the deployment, we have our supplemental sites. So each of these, I tried to include sort of an aerial view of each of these because the focus on sampling out here is really the flux measurements, right? So we have different land use types around the Bankhead, and so I wanted to give you some perspective of what that looked like in each of these S20, S30, and S40. So here's a photo of S20 that I took last month, and you can see the instrumentation listed there. I mentioned that I would point out the difference between S20, 30, and 40 instrumentation-wise. You'll see that this site has an ARRI and Doppler LiDAR, whereas this site here, S30, instead of the ARRI and Doppler LiDAR, has laser distrometer and RWP, right? So trying to capture different aspects of profiling, and so keep that in mind as you're sort of looking over the site, making your plans. It's really good to know what is where. Again, if you scan that instrument plan, there's a good schedule that shows what supplemental sites have what instrumentation. This S30, everything to the northeast is active grazing land for cattle right now. And everything sort of to the southwest of that area, that central point is hay for the cattle that graze in the other pasture. And S40, our site down in Double Springs, is another hay grassland, but you can see that it's sort of on the edge of the larger forest. Double Springs is much closer to the main site. It's only about 30 kilometers southwest of S10. Or I'm sorry, 20 kilometers southwest of S10. So it's a little bit closer to the main site. So something to keep in mind. So then that brings us just to our radars at this point. So here we have S3. I give you the full picture of the radars relative to each other and the supplemental sites and the main site here, just to give you the larger context. But the S3 is the CSAPR 2 up there near Trinity, Alabama. And you can see that it was sited to coincide with both the National Weather Service NEXRAD radar up in well, gosh, I can't remember the name of the town there, up in northeast Alabama, and then also with the UAH Armor radar, and so that is under construction right now. We're very excited to see that getting off the ground. And then S4 near Moulton, Alabama, closer to the site, is our KAX SACR, and you can see a photo of it there. Power is on at this site, and so we should be up and running by the end of the month, doing sort of our testing on how that system is looking. So that's kind of all I have as far as deep dive into instrumentation at each of these sites. Again, please go back and reference my my QR codes so you can check out the website and all the documentation that we have there. It's really a good first place to look when you are starting to develop your plans for coming to Bankhead. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mark, will you go to one of the one of the supplemental sites?
Yes.
So there was a question about having guest shelters at the supplemental sites. We
Sure.
don't have dedicated guest shelters, but as you can see, we do have shelters for the arm instrumentation. So sometimes if things can fit, then we can host some guest instruments there. So that's something you're going to want to talk to the observatory managers about.
Yep. In fact, just yesterday we had some techs go out and visit this exact site to measure to see if it would be able to host a particular instrument. So we are happy to send folks out there and take a look and see what space we have available, what capabilities we have.
Yeah. Okay. If you'll stop sharing, I'll start sharing.
Let's see here.
And we'll talk about how you can request that capability at ARM. Okay, can you all see my screen? Mark, can you see it? Okay, thanks, Shaka.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's jump in. So how to work with ARM. If the first thing you need to do is create an account with this. Don't worry, this is not overly cumbersome, and it also, you don't have to know everything you want to do just to get involved. So you can create an account and sign up to get our atmospheric observer, which is our monthly newsletter. You can get ASR news monthly, and you can look for ASR working group information there as well. And you can stop there. You don't have to go any further if you don't want to do any more. We do, again, this footer is at the bottom of all of our websites or all of our web pages. We mentioned acronyms a second ago. There is an acronyms list here, and then I put a link in the chat for our instrument search page as well. So different ways to find things. They're all pointing at the same data though from the databases. We have over here on the right, working with ARM. So there's information about how to use our facilities, and how to acknowledge ARM, how to submit a proposal, how to find employment, and how to view our priorities. So we're trying to make sure that you guys have reference material for things that you want to know about. Again, never assume. Use this Ask Us button here. That will route to whoever we need to get that information to work with you on whatever issue you're having or question that you have. So please use that. Do not be fearful of using it. Now let's get into a little bit specific. So you're going to see, I'm going to walk kind of you through the field campaign processes in a minute. Specifically in our guidelines document, there's information about, in Appendix E, information for Bankhead National Forest site. So there's a flow chart in here, and I'm sorry, I don't know that that's as clear as it should be, but again, it's in the guidelines. And this will walk you through activities that you're thinking about and what you need to do with ARM and the U.S. Forest Service. For activities that are not at the armed managed sites, ARM will not provide logistical support beyond helping to coordinate the research permit approval process. We will help you get to the right people with the Forest Service and help coordinate that piece, but you are going to have to do additional work potentially with the Forest Service. So this flow chart comes down to two options here, a research timeline and a special use timeline. If you get to the research timeline, this is for non-invasive activities, things like tree tapping or coring, harvesting, removing any sample from the forest, and non-ice safe laser applications. You can use this process. You need to be about 7 months out when you're proposing to ARM from the time you want to start your activity. This does include the U.S. Forest Service permitting timeline. These are the guidelines they have given us. If you have a special use timeline, this is going to be anything with aerial activities, tree removal, anything excavation construction, anything into digging with samples, or additional instrument pads, that sort of thing. These types of activities you need to be submitting 24 months out prior to your expected start date. Again, the U.S. Forest Service has given us the guidelines for their permitting process. We have no control over that process, but we will help you coordinate and we'll work with you the best we can to help you get to the right people and get things in so you can do your research. So on the ARM website, at the top, you have this research tab. And if you will go to the link and start at the top, this is our process for you asking ARM for support. So at the top here, is ARM the right place to propose your work? We give you our mission. We note strategic goals of BER. If you're not doing things aligned with those, ARM's probably not the right place for you. We also note the proposals that are coordinated with other groups, MSIL, Ameriflux, GWEX, that we do encourage those and support. So again, that's something to note in your proposal. We do want to note to you, when should you propose the work? I just gave you some guidelines on BNF specific work, but for all work in ARM, you need to at least be a month and a half out to 6 months out from the time you want to actually do the activity at the ARM site. For the FOA that's open right now, anything that's on site and critical to that FOA. So when the reviewers for DOE read that, if they need to know whether or not ARM can support it, you really need to have an associated ARM field campaign proposal into us right around the time you have your proposal into that FOA, which I believe is the 21st of November, but look that up, don't quote me. So that gives us time to provide a logistical review, and we will provide that directly to the DOE reviewing process, so you won't have additional work to transfer that over to the FOA process. In here, you also see a link to the field campaign guidelines document. Again, that's where that appendix is. And okay, the proposal deadlines calendar here, if you're wondering, there's an additional tool here to help you determine when you should be proposing to ARM. And then our instrument support request. For each instrument that you're going to bring on site, we need to know all about that instrument. We need to know the power requirements, the space requirements, the weight requirements, if it has any hazards. And so you'll step through this form for each instrument, and that will give us all the safety information and information we need to review whether or not we can support that instrument at the site that you're requesting it for. The campaign process here, section here, sorry. Small campaigns can be proposed at any time to ARM throughout the year. So if you click on the link here of the small campaigns, it will give you more details about that process and what fits into that. Observatory calls that are about moving an ARM observatory somewhere, or large field campaigns at a fixed site that might cost ARM more than 300K. Those are going to be annually. We will put out a call at the time for when you can propose those to us. Our manned aircraft and our tethered balloon system, again, they will be on approximately an annual schedule, and we will have open calls for that. So you can't do that just at any time. In here, again, the guidelines are linked. We're trying to make it easy for them to find. They're linked again. And this expectations for PIs, I will show you what's inside that link in just a minute. So on down this page, we go to, this is the overall high level timeline. Please read the instructions, read the guidelines, submit your information, be patient, and work with the people who are contacting you for more information or clarifications. We have to have the information needed before we can review it. So we want to do that in as timely a fashion as possible. Respond if we need an abbreviated proposal or a science plan, whatever we need, please be reactive in a positive way there. And then after things are approved, we all conduct the campaign together. And then during the closeout, you have to submit a final report and submit data within 6 months of the completion of that campaign. So as we go again down the webpage, when should I propose? The instructions that are linked here are on the form, which I will show you in a little bit. Where do you start? Your deadlines are here. Sorry. This link takes you also to that same tool I mentioned earlier that will tell you when you need to propose. And then this link here takes you to the actual form to propose the campaign. This page continues down with executing the campaign. So after approval, everybody is going to be asked for an abstract. That is so that we can have every campaign on the ARM website noting to the public and other users what is going on. And that is written by the PI. So you have to submit that to us. Some of the proposals, we will ask you for a data plan or a science plan or an aviation safety plan. And that's based on the activities, obviously, or how much complexity you have. If it's a singular guest instrument, we typically don't have a science plan or a data plan for something like that. All aviation activities do have aviation safety plans. After the end of your campaign, we'll notify you that you need to provide a final report. There are templates, instructions here on the website. We also provide those to you again when we tell you you have this deliverable. And then at the 6-month mark, if you have not submitted it, we start elevating that up through first the ARM management and then to DOE if you do not submit those things on time. The data submission follows the same timeline and we track them the same. You'll get emails from our ARM ServiceNow account. We're trying to make everything as standard as possible, so it's easy for you to be reminded of those deliverables. If you have a previous campaign that you have not provided the final report or the data for, we will not review an additional campaign for you until that is completed. So be aware, this isn't just our requirements because we want them to be, they are DOE requirements and they are auditable for ARM. At the bottom here, there's, please mute if you can. At the bottom here, there's a data and metadata submission instructions link that goes to that page. And then on the right, we have acknowledging ARM. And then a link to the full guidelines for acknowledging ARM. On this page also, there's a video here. So if you don't want to look at this recording later, or you want to send it to a friend, you can always look on the ARM website and get some information about how to propose. So back to the expectations for PIs. This page lays out at a pretty high level what you need to know. First off, ARM does have a code of conduct. We do take that very seriously in all locations that ARM operates. Please read through this. If you have a problem with it, it's the only thing I would discourage anyone from proposing to arm. It's interlinked with the fabric of how we operate. And so there's not tolerance for not being able to do things in that light. We do ask for an abstract, like I noted, a science plan, data submission, final report, and acknowledgement. And this just lays that out in a little bit different detail. We note some special considerations. So if you're looking at the Arctic shark or the tethered balloon, we make some notes here and provide links so you can find out more information. For guest instruments for AMF campaigns, we're noting here that ARM will consider logistical support for guest instruments associated with AMF campaigns. And then we do want you to communicate with us, but again, don't assume that ARM will support something. Just ask us and talk to us and we'll work out what we can. And again, instrumentation for offsite deployments, we lay out what's possible there at the bottom. I think I have a link. Yes. And then over here on the right, you will see this on a lot of our ARM website pages. We note the guidelines. Again, we're providing you the same links, but we're trying to make sure from our different pages you can get to the information you might be interested in. The propose a campaign link here, along with the ISR form, is right here. And then we have additional documentation here, the guidelines again, and then submitting the metadata and data. And then we have our radar plan and our aerosol operations plan links here as well. So you can find out more information that you might be interested in knowing what ARM is doing in that area. So the actual form itself is not very cumbersome. It's almost like a one-pager. So you can provide a ton of detail. We like you to be as concise as you can and get to the point because we do have a lot of these that come through. So, and you do not need to replicate, if you're proposing to an FOA, you don't need to replicate that whole proposal in here. What we want to know is that you have an FOA proposal. In this funding section, please indicate if this work is tethered to a funding call. That's very helpful to us, and it helps us get our logistical review to the right people within DOE. Again, you have to be registered with ARM. We want to know your lead science, the COIs that you have, give the campaign a proposal name, recommend an acronym. We do hold the right to change those. We rarely do it, but sometimes we find out things are copyrighted or there's things that we need to change. Or for KK at Kennewick, we found out that there is a specific reason that is a lowercase k, things like that. So then when and where are you planning on doing this? The scientific focus, the relevance, what's your plan, what resources are you requesting for this? And all of these notes on the left, please read those. They're very specific about what we're asking you and why. And then instrumentation. ARM instruments that are critical to your campaign. ARM is very flexible and reconfigurable, and we do have the option to pretty much move any of our instrumentation to any of our observatories. We do not do that very often. We typically reconfigure when it's a mobile facility deployment, something like that. But we want to make sure that any critical instruments that are tied to a campaign, if we have a new campaign and we've already approved something, we want to make sure we don't move an instrument that's critical to your campaign, or that we don't open a calibration activity right in the middle of your biggest interest time, that sort of thing. So please tell us what's most critical to you. Don't put all of the ARM instruments if they are not all critical to your work, please. And then this is where you put your guest instrument information in as well to tell us these are the guest instruments you are interested in bringing. And again, the instrument support request right here, this is linked, and we need to have one of those for every guest instrument that you are requesting to bring on site. And we need that before we can review the activity. If there's a non-ARM aerial related asset to be used, we want to know about that as early as possible so we can start the aviation safety planning process. And again, it's very rare, but every now and then we run into a proprietary situation. So we offer a link here on that. This is what you need to fill out to get the work started for us and what we need to review. The link here, which is also in the chat, is where you can see everything that I just displayed for you on this screen. And then again, at the bottom of every ARM page, don't hesitate, don't be intimidated by the size or complexity of ARM, and tell us what you're interested in and ask your questions. We will find the right person to clarify with you and work with you to answer any questions you need that may be hindering or concerning before you propose something. Additionally, if something changes after you've proposed, just talk to us. We work very well with our users and we will do everything we can to try to help support. For guest instrumentation, it's very rare that we can't support it. But we want to tell you as early as possible if there's some sort of deal breaker or inability we have. So please propose early and ask questions often. And this is all I have for my presentation, and I would like to open it up for questions. Do we want to, Michelle, Rolanda, do we want to do questions off the chat first? I'm just now getting back to that screen.
I believe we've answered all the questions in the chat as we've been doing. So if
In that case,
please raise your hand and we'll go back to that question, but I think we had quite a few going.
yes, and please raise your hand and speak up. This is really your time that we'll try to help you get answers for anything that you need now.
Yeah, may I ask?
Please.
I have a question for Mark regarding the data length at these different sites. Like how long the data is available right now and what is the plan like? And about also the question is about, do we have measurements of profiles? Like if I need measurements at different height under the canopy, can we get that data or not?
So your first question is really about how quickly data comes from the ARM site. And I invite you to check out our data discovery website. Nikki can rattle that off quicker than I can.
Yep, I'll find it, put it in the chat.
arm.gov/data, I believe.
Mhm.
And it really depends on the instrument, but we have very short lead times from instrument to data discovery. We have a whole team of folks that work through and check for issues on the data, and they get it moved through the system very quickly. What's the longest lead time we have, Nikki?
Some of it's difference between data and products. The majority of our products are in the data discovery and available to users within about an hour.
Uh-huh.
Operations for this observatory opened up October 1st. We are still working through some validation of some of the instrumentation, so it's not all available just yet. But once it starts flowing, it will keep flowing for the 5 years that we will be there. So we don't bar instrument issue or that sort of thing, which we have ways to notify, and we put DQ data quality reports out on instrumentation. Some of the products do take longer to come in and don't start, they don't work autonomously and 24/7, so they take a little bit longer.
Yep.
So if there's a specific one you're asking about, we can get into that. And you can always ask us if you don't
yeah.
see something.
That
Your-
makes sense. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Your second question was about getting measurements at different heights. Can I clarify whether that was with respect to a profiling measurement or if it was on the tower itself?
I meant, yeah, profiling measurements like
Okay.
sensible heat flux.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you put in an ARM field campaign request, you can confirm what target heights we're sampling at, and if you need to make a change to how that instrument is sampling, either the rate or the height or anything like that, you can request that in that field campaign proposal.
We only need the field campaign proposal if you want to change something or add something. You can look at data discovery and find the measurements. And if you can't find something, please just click that support and we'll help you find it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Before we go to Gabriel, there is a question in the chat that came in. Now it popped up from Amy that someone will be working with ARM data for graduate research. Could I take a tour of the facilities? So I thought that would be a good one that we should answer. And then
Yes.
you, Gabriel.
Right. So there is a link again at that footer. You can, working with ARM, you can get to visiting ARM sites. You are allowed to come visit the site. You do have to fill out an arm access request that will be linked on there. You have to tell us who you are, your nationality, and we have to run it through the proper systems. But other than that, there's nothing impeding you coming to tour the site. Please do that a week out, at least if you are a US citizen, and 30 to 45 days out if you are a non-US citizen. The other question I see in here, will the guest instruments on the tower? The S10 taller tower, 43-meter tower, yes, we do expect we will be hosting guest instruments on that tower. On the two 10-meter towers, not necessarily. I think that would be a specific request you're going to need to talk to us about, but we're open to talking about it.
Before we go, like Gabriel's been waiting, so Gabriel, like you ask your question and then we'll come back to some of the questions in the chat.
I was asking about if there's responsiveness to events that happen in the area. So if there's a severe storm or something that impacts an area nearby, are there sort of rapid deployments to collect measurements either before or after something like that occurs that are just kind of built into the ARM structure?
ARM does not have a rapidly deployable capability for events like that.
Okay.
We do, however, have shelters and things on our sites, and we do have procedures when you're on site to be concerned about those things and make sure everybody is safe, but we don't have measurement capabilities that we will go out.
And the timescale for these campaigns is not rapid enough to like get out there quickly and take measurements or something if you wanted to.
If someone proposes a rapid deployable system that might be hosted at BNF, that would be really defined by that system and who has that capability and what they want to do. It wouldn't necessarily be ARM instruments that we're doing that with, because we don't carry that capability with our ARM instruments or observatories. But if someone wanted to station out of BNF, then that would be something we could talk about.
I see. Okay, thank you.
I would also share that our data are continuous, so they are operating, so they are capturing before the event. We may turn them off during the event for safety reasons, but they are operating and going into our archive and of course following the event. So they are available that way from where we are located. And then we do occasionally do what we call a data epoch, and share those on the ARM data center website that if we've identified a certain particular event of interest, like we do have an epoch for a previous solar eclipse. So there's those opportunities as well.
A really good point. Thank you. Yes, we don't move our ARM instruments typically. So they are, yes, the continuous measurements will be going, and we rarely shut them down. We do pull things in for hurricanes, things like that. It's rare we would pull anything in for a thunderstorm.
Mike, you popped on. Were you going to clarify anything that I said? Nope.
I wanted to point out, thank you, Mike, for jumping in and answering a bunch of questions in the chat. If you haven't seen your answer, let us know. That way we're not missing anything.
I did want to add a little bit to what Nikki was talking about earlier on what's required. I know she mentioned the instrument support request, which lists out the electrical requirements, field of view requirements, et cetera, but also the hazards associated with your equipment, whether it be rad source, lasers, cryogens, et cetera. The laboratory ESNH program will require a safety packet from each one of you that is not at a laboratory for their review prior to approving the campaign. And they may request training certificates, especially for things like rad sources, cryogens, things like that.
Yep.
I want to touch on
There's a question in the chat that I did want to come back to that I'm not sure we answered, Nikki. How long can guests conduct campaigns at our site? Is there any limitation on the duration?
Currently, there's no limitation. We will, if it is a long duration item, I mean, we've had some in Oklahoma that have been going on for decades. You do have to resubmit. You can submit a field campaign. You can ask for an extension twice, and then you will need to resubmit a new field campaign at that time. But as long as you keep doing that, there's no particular limit.
I wanted to address a couple of questions regarding the character of the vegetation at the main site and at the supplemental sites. You know, my take, Edwin, you know, Mark, my favorite jump in is Forest Service will have a pretty good inventory of what's at the main site regarding tree species. But regarding the supplemental sites, you know, I think we just have to kind of go out there, take some photos, speak with the landowners to get a sense of what's being planted and what schedules might look like for planting, as an example.
And Hattie's exploring some opportunities that we might have that if that is being logged somewhere, we will try to find a way to make it available, but we don't know yet what that capability is. So if you have ideas or you know of external data sets that would be very useful to users, please let us know. We would like to know that so that we can explore those things.
I'm not sure, did we answer the question from Matthew about products that are currently appear on the data discovery in 1-day batches, such as our 915 megahertz products? Is it feasible to access a data stream which populates more frequently? I guess we might need clarification on that question.
Yeah, let's grab that question, and Matthew, if you'll stay on at the end, we'll try to help you with that. I think I'm gonna have to take a look and to work on that one. There was guest instrumentation is preferable for data that is collected by guest instruments to be processed by the ARM site data system. You have options with your guest instruments, and the instrument support request will ask you if you want ARM to collect the data and move it somewhere. That is a possibility. There's a possibility we could collect it and you can pick it up. Depending on your processing needs and how you need to handle that data before you provide a PI product back to ARM, or if your data is going into a different archive, we might simply link to the archive instead of duplicate anything. So we have different options and avenues to do that. If you'll just let us know what you know and what you don't know, we'll discuss the specifics on how we can help you with that.
Lauren also asked in the chat if it's preferable for guest instrumentation to be processed by the ARM site data system.
That was the one I was addressing. Yeah, there's two questions though. The way you just said it made me think I might answer another. It's collecting is an option. ARM processing the data would kind of be a different question. So if you're interested and you have a similar instrument to something that ARM operates, us processing it would be a bit of a different question, but we certainly can help with the collection and get it to you in a fashion that you need to get it or pick it up. So we just need the specifics to discuss that one. On the tower, there will be power and fiber up the tower at 5 levels. Am I right? Or 4 or 5? How many levels do we have? Power and fiber up.
Let's see, power
It's
level
pretty
is
extensive.
5.
So 5 levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can obviously run up and down from there, but there is power and fiber available. So for Nancy on, is it possible to adjust deployment dates on field campaigns? So the ARM site at BNF will operate continuously over the whole period. If you have an approved field campaign that has dates, we can change those after approval. We can work with you on that. It happens a lot. Because we realize you might be proposing something years out that's associated with this FOA, and there might be a lot of things that change. So we do regularly change start and end dates. Another thing that may not be as well known for some of the people here, we do. So ARM field campaign has a start and end date to each one of them. You can have an ARM field campaign that has intensive operating periods within it. So you could be operating on site for 2 weeks out of each year, but your field campaign goes on for 3 or 4 years. That sort of thing. Just disclose to us and talk to us about what you want to accomplish, and we'll help you set it up right. And if you propose in the form and through our discussions, we find out that something's a little different, we can help correct that in the system. So don't stress so much about those details and really just stress about getting us the details of what you're really trying to accomplish and what support you need.
We're usually very flexible. Our limitations are power, space, and if you're running up against another campaign where you would impact something that they're already plan to do, we may not be able to necessarily adjust your dates. But other than that, we're super flexible.
That's a good point, yeah. And when we have, right now we have about 100 field campaigns going on across ARM. So it's oftentimes, if it's very complex situation and there's 20 field campaigns going on at once, we might do a coordination meeting and work with everybody together. And we've never had any issues with PIs not being able to help us work it out all together. So you just be comfortable and help us work with you. And I'm confident we can work things to some satisfaction. Existing soil data lithography. That is a question that's a little bit beyond our expertise here because we don't have that as ARM. We can put you in touch with the Forest Service to discuss some of those things. Patty, do you want to offer an email or information on who they should talk to about something like that? It would be really good. And if you have things that are associated with the ARM site, we'll help you coordinate with the Forest Service if it's associated with something on our site. Just tell us what it is, and otherwise we don't want to hinder your communications with the Forest Service in any fashion either. So
yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Patty. And as far as the Forest Service goes, I think just like a nice easy way to look at it, without looking at each one individually. We do have certain boundaries that we're in under our special use permit. So basically anything that's going within those boundaries, will be pretty simple with the Forest Service. It's when you start going outside of that boundary where things get a little sticky. And just so you know that if you need a special use permit for anything, so if you're going to take an instrument, set it up and leave it, most likely if it's outside of our area, you're going to need a special use permit. And sometimes those can take a year or 2 years to get approved. So keep that in mind when you're, thinking about locations.
yes, the Forest Service does have a lot of research that's going on that has use in other things. So it does happen as possible. It just takes some time.
Yep. And then just remember that we are guests there. So that means you would be a guest there as well. So we try to respect their space. And it's a national forest, so all national forest rules apply. So if you're in the forest and it's hunting season, bring orange or yellow to wear when you're going out like to the tower site or something. It's relatively safe and, they do watch out for people, but it's still a dangerous situation. So just be cautious of that. And also there's wild animals out there. They have snakes, that are poisonous. They also have wild boars running around. We don't really come into contact with any of the wildlife too much, but just be aware that it is possible in the forest. And just be respectful. The tower site is in the wilderness area and they protect that very heavily. And it does upstream from the Sipsey River. So just be cautious of dumping anything or any kind of spills or anything like that. So we take that pretty seriously.
As do we, so.
That's right.
To the soils question, Patty, do you have, I think somebody would like information, and it's probably the Forest Service on where they can get soil lithography.
Oh yeah, that's on the Forest Service website too. We can look that up and get a link for that.
Okay.
Can you try to do that now? And if not, Nicole will reach out to you afterward.
The
I look
space
forward to that field
available,
campaign.
the space available on the 40-meter tower. I will, so once we have our instrumentation deployed, I can give you a better idea of the amount of space that will be available on each of the platforms.
Can we get a list of available species or parameters at each site? Species is I don't know if we're talking animals or plants there, but if you could clarify that. We will have information about the soils related to our stamp system. If you can help us understand what you're looking for, we'll see what we can do to find it.
John Guy, I think you've had a couple questions for feedback from the community. Would you like to voice them for us, for them? And then they can share it in the survey that will be going out with the link to the presentations and the recording.
Yes, so just a general comment about soliciting feedback and information being available. Yes. So thanks everyone for making it to the end of the webinar. Please take, we really appreciate you take some time to fill out that link to the survey. So this is the surveymonkey.com survey about the webinar. We take this feedback very seriously in kind of designing and responding to any of the things we can improve upon during this webinar, but also specifics we can follow up with you about questions that you still have that are unanswered from this webinar. And we will also be providing links and copies of slides and videos and recordings for your own reference, and as you are kind of preparing your proposal as well.
Right. And in the chat, you had asked if unvalidated BNF data could be used in submitted proposals, and you had an earlier question. So
what do you mean by unvalidated? Right now, if we haven't validated the data, it doesn't show up in data discovery,
it doesn't show up? Okay.
It wouldn't be downloaded.
Okay, perfect. So whatever you can get off of data discovery is fair game to use however you want to use.
And I think earlier you had also asked the community to let us know if the field campaign proposal form is helpful or could be better, help you better prepare for your proposals, if I may have worded that incorrectly. So Changa, you would ask them to tell us that, which is a good question.
Yes, so, ARM folk, please feel free to correct me if I have this wrong, but simply filling out the form by the time of the proposal submission deadline will be sufficient for the FOA requirements.
No, if you do not have any guest instruments, then filling out the form. But if you have any guest instruments, we need those instrument support requests before we can do our review.
Right.
But those are the two things you need. One AFC and then one instrument support request for each instrument. And we'll be good to go.
Thanks.
And there's another question in the chat for Chongai to answer, I believe, specific interests in VOC measurements on the main site, for example, isoprene.
Yes. So to answer there's tremendous interest in VOC and also BVOC measurements at the main site. I'm not sure if you were asking if we were planning on making those measurements or if we're just simply interested in having those measurements.
And then there's a follow-on. There's an additional question about flux tower data be processed following the same pipeline like Ameriflux.
So the plan is for this to be processed in very similar pipelines as the Ameriflux data processing pipeline.
Yeah, hi, Chongai. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm if the data set would be available, like if you're taking measurements for them.
Okay, there will be some BVOC measurements available at the site, but they will be acquired in collaboration with the Environmental Molecular Science Laboratory. And right now, again, let me know if I have this wrong, the only plans so far are to make these BVOC measurements in the spring, summer, and fall of 2025 at the main site.
Yeah, they'll be operating, my understanding, during the TBS campaigns while we are there. And when they get processed by EMSL, they'll be in the EMSL archive, but we'll do our best to link them and make sure that we're pointing as best we can to all of those measurements. We share metadata, and so it'll probably show up in our archive, but it will take you there to download it so they can have their metrics that we all have requirements for. All right, and Matthew, remind me again what you were looking for to find, and I think ARM people or people who are good at finding ARM data, please stay on for a second and I bet we can get Matthew an answer.
If not, we should be able to have his email address and
Yeah, that would be
use so they
great.
can email him.
He was asking about RWP.
Oh, there's
data.
Matthew.
Oh, no, that was me. He was asking about RWP data, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if we can grab that, and get his, oh, there we go. Near real-time access to certain data streams, it might be something to work out in an off. Okay, Matthew, we do, yes, it's something we can work out. It depends on your need, but we do have a few things going on for near real-time data flows for things that require low latency or whatnot. So please just, yeah, feel free to propose it if you want, or feel free to just ask us about it and we'll get you to the right person to talk to either in our data services area or on our on-site operations. So I think we'll stay on until everybody logs off, but I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and thank you for attending the webinar. And again, just ask us if you have questions and we're here to try to help. You'll find ARM is a very service-oriented set of people, so we help where we can.